If you were given a sentence to live in this tiny box for the rest of your life, how do you think you'd keep yourself occupied? Over 450,000 inmates in the U.S. think of the same question every single day as they live their life in solitary confinement. Ever since I watched some Netflix shows like Prison Break and Orange is the New Black, the idea of solitary confinement has really intrigued me on how it's even legal in this country. Think about it. If you lived your life inside this box, don't you think it would have some pretty negative mental effects on you? It is only 80 square feet, not much bigger than a king-size bed, and you live your life in there every single day alone with no contact to anyone else, but getting your meals from some guards that don't even bother saying hello to you. Loneliness causes an increased risk of high blood pressure and immune dysfunction. Also, not having social and sensory stimuli causes the brain to waste away, impairing spatial orientation and emotional control. Now you're probably thinking, they must let you out at some time, right? Well, in reality, most prisoners in solitary confinement are locked up for 23 to 24 hours of the day. Most prisoners only get 3 to 5 hours of recreational time per week, and that time is spent alone. And you remember what I told you that loneliness does to a person, right? Increased risk of high blood pressure, and also a prolonged period of immobility, meaning that they're spending over 23 hours a day in an 80-foot square cell, increases the chance of someone developing Parkinson's disease, diabetes, congestive heart failure, stroke, and chronic lung disease, all from being stuck in this box for almost the whole entire day without being able to run around. However, those individuals that go into solitary confinement with no previous mental disorders actually come out of solitary confinement with mental disorders most of the time. Psychological effects can include anxiety, depression, anger, cognitive disturbances, perceptual distortions, obsessive thoughts, paranoia, and psychosis, and those can occur without having any previous mental illnesses. So, why is it important to know about this? Well, let's look at the bigger picture here. What is our current day society doing to help inmates who are in prison or are going to be in solitary confinement for a long time? There are very few programs in place currently that actually rehabilitate solitary confinement inmates. But I did read about an interesting approach from a warden in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and she created a program where there were 6 stages, and once an inmate reached a stage, there was a perk, for instance, like receiving recreational equipment to use, like a basketball, getting a TV, to calling family, which solitary confinement inmates usually never be able to do. And from this program that she came up with, the number of people in solitary in this prison has actually dropped by 20%, and there was also a 76% drop in the yearly rate of critical accidents like physical assaults and rapes, and an 88% drop in smaller rule breaking such as smoking in a cell. And the huge decrease of these statistics is not really that surprising, because the intervention of this program has made the prison overall better and has given inmates motivation to do better when they're in this bad situation. They're less likely to be violent, and if they knew that they could call a family member if they were being good, that just gives them even more motivation. Having these incentives turned around the whole outlook on someone in solitary, and that's what the whole outlook should be like across the United States. The ability for this warden to turn something as negative as solitary confinement into something positive that had incentives and benefits only affected these inmates even more positively when they got out into the real world, and that is what solitary confinement, even if the country has decided to have it, should do as a result. Not just keep people locked up, but actually try to rehabilitate them and help them and have these programs. And I wish that more prisons had these, but it's just they don't. I happened to come across a website that had quotes from people that spent time in solitary when they were asked, what is solitary confinement like for prisoners? And people put it into their own words like this. For example, Frankie Guzman, he spent 13 months in solitary confinement as a juvenile, and he ended up turning out to be a juvenile lawyer in California, went to UCLA, and this was his quote from when he was in solitary. He says, solitary confinement was like this. If you were being a little jerk, the guards would handcuff you behind your back, tilt you forward, and let you go. They would call it tipping. People would often break their nose, cheekbones, crush their face, lose some teeth. They are communicating to us, this is what happens to people who misbehave. Another quote by someone anonymous. said solitary confinement feels like you're at a funeral of someone you love dearly, but you can't cry. Lastly, the United Nations says, considering the severe mental pain or suffering solitary confinement may cause, it can amount to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. What in the world can we do to stop this?